My crush humiliated me during our first date, but I gave him a second chance. He proceeded to make my life absolute hell and called me an ugly beach, so I escaped him and watched his life get ruined. I remember my first date with my crush, Aaron. It went awful. He literally told me I looked unflattering in my dress and my hair looked basic. These words especially hurt because I was always super insecure about my looks and he knew this. However, at the end of the date he told me he would like to take back his words because after looking at my imperfections he realized that I really was beautiful. I wasn't sure how to respond at first, but due to my own insecurities about my looks and my belief that a girl like me could never find a guy like him, I let him sweet-talk me into giving him another chance. This was my first mistake. Over the next few weeks, Aaron showered me with affection. He left flowers in my locker, wrote me sweet notes, and planned elaborate dates. I told him in passing about a family outing I took when my dad was still alive. It was at the local zoo, and will forever be a memory that held a special place in my heart. I actually told Aaron about my dad too, how he raised me to be a confident and strong woman, how he nurtured and cared for me all while letting me be free and explore myself. To my surprise, he took me to that very zoo. Being there with him felt bittersweet, and I wished we could all go there together as a family just one more time. At the time, I wondered what my dad would have thought of Aaron. Aaron was incredibly thoughtful. He even got me a stuffed animal from the zoo with a recording of his voice inside. It felt like a whirlwind romance, and I was swept off my feet. Every date had extreme detail and intent put into it. I felt like I was living in a dream and never wanted to wake up. One evening while we were watching a movie at his house, he commented, you should really consider losing a few pounds. You'd be perfect if you were just a bit slimmer. His words stung, but I brushed them off at the time because I was convinced that he only wanted what was best for me. In reality, I should have looked back and realized that this was how he truly felt. It was the second comment he'd made about my body, after all, but somehow I didn't see it. As our relationship progressed, Aaron's controlling behavior became more apparent, and even I, a love-struck, insecure girl, could not ignore it anymore. He would question my clothing choices and insisted that I wear what he liked. "Why do you need to wear that dress? It's too revealing and I don't want other guys looking at you," he said one night, his tone leaving no room for argument. It's not like the clothing was inappropriate either, it was just a mere crop top. Yet even though he had a couple of questionable comments on my body and my clothing choices, I stayed with him. He was very hot and cold all the time. He'd go weeks worshipping the ground I walked on, only to then ridicule how I dressed, acted, and spoke. When things were good, I felt invincible, euphoric even, and he was my Prince Charming. We would have intimate moments, and he would praise me and every inch of me, and that feeling was surreal. I kept wanting to experience it over and over, but during our lows, I felt the lowest I had ever been. I was too addicted to the highs of his affection and blind to the lows of his criticism. I had determined my self-worth based on his approval, and I couldn't bear the thought of losing him. Soon enough, we graduated and began living together. Throughout college, I thought that an out-of-state college would better suit my major, but he insisted that we attend the same college. Aaron's control over me tightened like a noose. One day after school, he said, "I don't think you should hang out with Stacy anymore." "Why not?" I asked, confused. "She seems like the type that sleeps with a bunch of guys. I don't want my girl around anyone like that. I'm just looking out for you," he insisted. "But what does that have to do with us hanging out?" "I was just going to her house to study," I argued. "Fine, do what you want. I guess I'm just a terrible boyfriend for trying to make sure you don't look a certain way." "Go ahead," he snapped. I sighed, feeling the pressure. "I'll stay here. I'll text her I had an emergency or something." Eventually, he started to isolate me from the rest of my friends, insisting they were a bad influence. "Why do you need them when you have me?" he would ask, his voice oozing with possessiveness. Slowly, I stopped seeing them, and my world shrunk to just the two of us. His words began to cut deeper with each passing day. "You're lucky to have me, you know that? No one else would put up with a hard head like you," he would sneer during our arguments. His constant belittling chipped away at my confidence and left me feeling trapped. Despite the pain, I clung to the memory of the man who had once made me feel special. I convinced myself that if I just tried harder, I could bring back the loving Aaron I had fallen for. I did his homework, I learned how to cook for him, did his laundry, and was there for him whenever he said he needed me. But every effort was met with what felt like more hatred, with him getting especially angry whenever I would make a meal for him that was not cooked exactly how he liked it. He never cooked for me once, however, claiming that this was clearly the woman's job. One night after a pretty brutal argument, I finally hit my breaking point. Aaron had screamed at me for talking to a male classmate about an assignment, and he took that as clear evidence of me wanting to cheat on him. When he was yelling at me, his rage was so intense that it felt like I could reach out to touch it, and his eyes were wild with anger. "You're nothing without me," he spat, his words laced with venom. "An ugly girl like you should be grateful I even look at you. Newsflash, you're not the prize in this relationship." Those were the words that truly broke me. For the first few minutes after that happened, I looked at myself in the bathroom, taking apart every single insecurity that I had. I looked at every inch of me, cursing myself and the heavens for making me this way. I cried myself to sleep that night. I couldn't shake the feeling of being utterly broken. But even though I was going through such a rough time, a spark of determination ignited within me. I knew if my dad saw how I was letting other people treat me, he wouldn't stand for it. I imagined what he would say to me. I imagined the things he would do to Aaron, but he was not here to do it. I needed to take action myself. I couldn't continue living like this. I knew that I deserved more than his toxic love. Over the next few weeks, I secretly planned my escape. I reconnected with my best friend, Emily, sharing my ordeal with her. She was horrified and immediately offered to help me. We formed a plan for me to leave Aaron and start a new life. On a moonless night when Aaron was asleep, I packed a small bag with my essentials and quietly slipped out of the apartment. My heart pounded nearly out of my chest as I made my way to Emily's house. I constantly looked over my shoulder, scared out of my mind at the thought of him waking up and catching me. When I finally reached her doorstep, I fell into her arms and sobbed with relief. She felt warm and safe. Aaron's reaction to my disappearance was as I had expected. He bombarded me with messages and calls, pleading for me to come back. He sent flowers to my workplace, left love notes on my car, and even somehow found Emily's house and showed up there demanding to see me. It wasn't until she threatened to call the police that he backed off. But his efforts didn't stop there. They continued for months, promising me a life of beauty if I gave him another chance. I remembered the old me that wanted nothing more than that, but not the new me. I remained strong and refused to let him manipulate me again. With Emily's help, I rebuilt my life. I ended up in therapy to rediscover my passions and eventually regained my confidence. The scars from my relationship with Aaron were deep, but they definitely taught me strength and resilience. As I settled into my new life, memories of Aaron still haunted me. They were like shadows lurking in the corners of my mind, reminding me of the darkness I had escaped. Therapy sessions with Dr. Williams helped me process my experiences and understand the depth of Aaron's manipulation. Dr. Williams once said, "Abusers often use love as a weapon. They shower you with affection to make you dependent on them, and then they strip it away to control you." Her words resonated deeply, and I realized how Aaron had strategically dismantled my self-esteem. But with each passing day, I grew stronger. I felt happiest while painting. It was a passion I had abandoned during my time with Aaron. Each brushstroke was a step toward reclaiming my identity. I poured my emotions onto the canvas, capturing my experiences and transforming my pain into beauty. Emily was my rock throughout this journey. She encouraged me to join a support group for survivors of abusive relationships. Sharing my story with others who had walked a similar path was cathartic. We cried, laughed, and celebrated our victories together. Daniel entered my life when I least expected it. We met at an art gallery where my paintings were on display. He was captivated by my work, and we started a conversation about his art taste and how art imitates life. Unlike Aaron, Daniel was gentle and genuine. He saw me, not just my appearance, and seemed to appreciate my love for art. Our relationship blossomed slowly and was built on trust and understanding. Daniel never pressured me to open up about my past, but he was always there to listen when I was ready. His patience and kindness were like a balm to my wounded heart. One rainy afternoon, we sat in a cozy cafe, sipping hot chocolate. Daniel reached across the table and held my hand. "I want you to know that I love you for who you are, inside and out. You're beautiful, not just because of how you look, but because of your strength and your heart," he said softly. Tears welled up in my eyes as I realized how far I had come. For the first time, I felt truly loved and accepted. I leaned in and kissed him, grateful for the second chance at happiness. Our wedding was a simple, intimate affair, surrounded by close friends and family. As I walked down the aisle, I felt a sense of peace and fulfillment. Daniel's eyes sparkled with love, and I knew that this was the beginning of a new chapter in my life. Years passed, and our family grew. We welcomed two beautiful children into our lives, and the sound of their laughter filled our home with joy. Daniel and I navigated the challenges of parenthood together and supported each other through sleepless nights and endless diaper changes. Daniel's support was a beacon of light in my darkest hours. He never hesitated to hold me when I needed comfort or to listen when I needed to vent. His love was a constant reminder that I wasn't alone. One winter evening, as we sat by the fireplace, I opened up to Daniel about the depths of my past. I told him about the manipulation, the control, and the emotional abuse. I expected him to react with anger or pity, but instead he held my hand and said, "I'm so proud of you for finding the strength to rebuild your life. You're an incredible woman, and I'm honored to be your husband." As our children grew, I made it a priority to teach them about self-worth and respect. I wanted them to understand the importance of valuing themselves and others. I reflected on the journey that had brought me here, and the scars from my past were still there, but they no longer hurt me. 8 years after leaving Aaron, I stood in my kitchen preparing dinner for my family. The sound of laughter filled the house as Daniel played with our two children. While scrolling through the news that night, I stumbled upon a headline that made my breath catch in my throat. Aaron had been arrested for driving under the influence and seriously injuring someone. A mixture of emotions washed over me: relief, anger, and a strange sense of closure. News of Aaron's arrest felt like a reminder of the darkness that I had escaped. He had spiraled into a life of self-destruction, and his actions had finally caught up with him. While I felt a sense of closure, I also felt a pang of sadness for the man he could have been. But my focus was now on the present and the future. I had built a life filled with love, joy, and purpose. I began volunteering at a support group, helping others find their way out of the darkness. My paintings continued to inspire, and I held exhibitions to raise awareness about the impact of abuse. One day, while volunteering at a women's shelter, I met a young woman named Sarah. She reminded me of myself, trapped in a toxic relationship, struggling to find her worth. We talked for hours, and I shared my story with her. At some point in our conversation, I noticed her eyes light up with hope, and I knew that she had found the same glimmer of strength within herself.